Welcome, everyone. Wow, what a turnout. Thanks so much for joining today. This presentation will be made available to all that are registered. We do have a lot to cover, so I'll ask you to please hold your questions till the end. My name is Raj Agarwal, and I will be your host for today's session. Let me start by saying things have been crazy, absolutely nuts, over the last 18 to 24 months. First the pandemic, then supply chain distributions, now the volatile economy, and the worsening of an already uncertain business environment. It begs a simple question: what can we businesses do to adapt quickly and stay afloat in such a dynamic marketplace? Most often, our answer is to turn to technology. Many organizations believe that traditional ERPs, or even modern ERPs for that matter, can help solve all of their procurement and supply chain issues through standardization, centralization, and recording of transactional data. But of course, we are all also aware of the cost, time, and complex issues that come from implementing them. Going one step further, if I may, it is exactly these reasons that the procurement and supply chain software provider industry came to fruition, and providing the ability to rapidly develop innovative features that businesses can deploy right away. So how have things changed? How have our expectations changed? And how have the needs of the market changed? Today's discussion takes a deeper look into what businesses should consider when implementing a technology solution for procurement and supply chain. I am honored to be joined today by two renowned technology experts, Jeffrey Rajamani, a senior sourcing and procurement analyst from Forrester, and Kelly Smith, GEP Senior Director of Platform Development. So Jeffrey, we know things may not always be as they seem. Companies really need to look before they leap. Where should they invest to future-proof their own digital capabilities? What type of platform and capabilities help them meet today's challenges, stay competitive, and actually be sustainable over time?
Hey, thanks, Raj, for the question. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for tuning in. It's my pleasure to be here today talking to you all. Raj, I think you perfectly set the context. We are all aware of the fact that traditional ERPs were instrumental in setting up the procurement and also the supply chain industry in the first place. Now, we all know with the arrival of new ERPs, digital operating platform, DOPs, what we call, the question is, where are we at this point of time? It's good to standardize, it's good to centralize, it's very good also to record data. ERPs are all good for that. There's no doubt about it. And we are not talking about replacing the ERPs. But when you look at your procurement function, when you look at your supply chain function, the question to ask is, do you get what you want from the ERP tools and the other satellite tools that are associated with it? Well, again, ERP does a lot of things, and there's no debating that, okay? But in order to do the procurement, the supply chain stuff, Forrester believes that it has to be done outside of the ERP. And the question is, why? The modern procurement technology and the way it's developed, it's best suited to be done outside of the ERP. You all might have heard of Forrester's label called supplier value management. So supplier value management talks about 6 components of the source to contract and the procure to pay, encompassing the entire source to pay suite. Now, we talk about bringing in third-party integrations. Now, all of these do work well outside the ERP. Now, in terms of our analysis, we have been talking to enterprises across the globe, those running the entire S2P suite on a modern platform. What does what do modern platforms offer? They offer improved visibility, they offer control, they offer centralization. I'll just take one point to elaborate a little bit on that, visibility. Now, visibility on the spend. What we are seeing from clients is really, there is a going back to traditional sourcing in terms of a big focus. The other day, I was talking to a large bank in the Asia Pacific, and I was talking to the head of the AP functions there. Now, he was talking about, he's getting invoices from a lot of their suppliers, and they do it on their ERP system now, but absolutely he does not have the visibility into all the invoices that come from a single supplier. Where is it pending? Do we have purchase orders? Do we have purchase requisitions sent? Do these invoices, how many invoices have come from a single supplier, and so on and so forth. And it was a nerve-wracking situation for this head of the AP. Now, we all know that the ERP is a very good singular portal, but in order to perform that many-to-many networks, you need to look outside the ERP, and that's where supplier value management tools come into play. Now, if I just kind of, elucidate the key factors why an ERP will not fit the bill, typically, let's look at it one by one. When you say ERPs, they take years to implement. There's no debating this. This means they take years to deliver on the strategic sourcing directions of the company, the goals of the company, and thanks to modern platform, now you are able to do this fast. ERPs kind of also reduce the efficiency and the cohesion in procurement functions. Why? They create silos. They create barriers to workflow. But this is not the case with modern software, modern procurement, and supply chain software, because they seamlessly connect with a plethora of different systems. They eliminate silos in the process. Again, when you look at modern ERPs, they bring modern procurement software and supply chain software. They help you build the supply chain resiliency, which is not possible in a traditional ERP. The same holds good for what we call as a future fit supply network. Now, we have been talking to a lot of enterprise users, and they, when they consider procurement to be done in a traditional ERP, they all sound a little bit confused because of the complex nature of this. So what modern software does is it helps you eliminate all these manual workarounds that you have with these inflexible ERPs. Forrester kind of did a very comprehensive wave analysis exercise that was published a couple of months ago. We talk about innovative, flexible platform that is future fit, and it has to enable creativity, adaptability, and resiliency. And I think if I were to conclude on your question, Raj, I say that, this is an indispensable condition that, you need to have a dedicated platform to handle your procurement and supply chain.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. Yeah, no, that's very good insight. Things are happening so fast, right? And so I know that a lot of companies are already sort of feeling this pinch in this environment. And so the question is, if you look at a modern platform, what are the key drivers that you see that can provide sort of the immediate value for some of these companies?
So when you talk of, there are a plethora of platforms there. I just want to step back a little bit. As you rightly alluded to, Raj, things are happening too fast. Okay, you can't wait. The drivers are, the procurement function is a very important function, beautifully sandwiched between the internal functions in an organization and the external ecosystem, including third parties. So they are now challenged to show value to their organizations. And we are seeing that procurement is kind of changing from a reactive to a more proactive kind of function, meaning to say that they are looking to see what is likely to happen and kind of preempt those actions much in advance before these happen. Now, modern software that we talked about will help users, including CPOs and procurement officers, react more quickly and even help in the so-called prediction, proactive prediction, and risk mitigations much well in advance, well before they arise. It's almost like you can just imagine autopiloting. You're diverting a plane just before a turbulence occurs through autopilot, and that's the what modern software does. The second thing is on the strategic sourcing solutions that is not offered with ERPs like S/4HANA and so on, because it'll take kind of years to realize the central procurement vision. So we have modern software that kind of enables you to kind of address all these the disadvantages that you face with the traditional or the cloud-based ERPs. So what do they do? When you look at modern software, I talked about the three main functions that they do. They help you to automate tasks, they help you to prioritize actions, and optimize your decisions. So meaning to say that, for example, it will help suppliers contracts to identify issues that require negotiations and by redlining contracts. Now, enriching of supplier data from risk profile to product content is something that also modern software does beautifully. Now, the question is, there are, if you look at the large ERP providers, the SAPs, the Oracles, Infos, and so on and so forth. I mean, I did allude to this. It takes years for us to implement some of these software because they're inflexible, complex in nature, do have a painful approach to procurement. I mean, I did hear that, there is this business suite of SAP that has been extended for another 5 years beyond when it originally was supposed to be pivoted. And there are instances, where CIOs have higher short-term priorities. They don't have large transformation programs, and what they need is to need products that are move-in ready, and they don't have the time to wait that long. And that's why I think you need to have modern software for that.
Great, Jeffrey. So I know you've done some studies at Forrester, et cetera, where you've looked specifically at ERPs and how they're playing out. So I know a lot of companies are looking to move that way, and they're sort of feeling some of the pain. Can you sort of elaborate to some degree in terms of what your research has kind of said, and we talked a little bit about a modern platform and why some of the companies would potentially look to move to do their sourcing and then have their sourcing suite outside of sort of an ERP. So if you could elaborate on some of the research that you've done and maybe some of the, give us an example or two, that would be great.
Absolutely, right. So I think let me start with the survey. I mean, we kind of looked at the top almost 8-10 ERP providers, and we identified the decision makers in ERP providers, and we identified enterprises that were users of these ERPs, and we talked to the decision makers of these ERPs. So we talked to over 3,000 decision makers. This was a survey done last year. So the question to them, among others, were, how satisfied are you with your current ERP providers? So what we found was pretty interesting. We found that on an average, between 20 to 39% of the enterprises are not happy. They are dissatisfied with their current ERP providers. Why? Because they are planning to evaluate or plan to replace their current ERP with another product from the same vendor, it could be. And there are others who also said we are evaluating or planning to replace our current ERP with a different vendor. Now, the third category, that's those who are evaluating or planning to replace their current ERP with a different vendor, was higher in terms of percentage than moving to the same vendor but a different product. Now, why is this happening? We know that existing ERP approaches are too hefty to be agile. Forrester, in our study that we do, is most clients we speak to, they are dealing with a mountain of legacy applications. I mean, just imagine applications, those were largely bought in the 1990s, perhaps early 2000s, and then they were customized to death. Now, what has happened? It's rendering them almost impossible to change. In some cases, what has happened is clients are also dealing with so much of technical debt from such kind of ERP approaches that, they are really clueless in terms of, what upgrade options do they have. And they are, one of the drivers for these kind of either switching the products or completely re-implementing, moving out of their current one. The second trend that was revealed as a result of this survey, Raj, is business leaders, they don't want to trade off innovation in the name of corporate standardization. What this means is, the single vendor sourcing strategies will not hold for long. So choosing brand recognition is important. Integration is much more important than functionality. I mean, all these were kind of sales pitches that came from ERP. All these have failed. No one wants to have a business agility or access to features just in the name of cost reduction. I mean, everyone is aligned to their corporate strategy. Everyone is aligned to their goals. Now, Forrester clients pursuing the so-called SaaS offerings, they kind of, as a result of the survey, said innovation is important for us, and the user experience, UX, is of utmost importance. The third point, I mean, very quickly, is over-dependence. I mean, we call this in simple terms vendor lock-ins. This vendor lock-ins, it creates a lot of commercial and technical risk. So this was the case that happened with ERPs. In most cases, these strong strategic partnerships were done, preferred sources for getting lower prices, so-called better services, and so on. But clients, who take those partnerships a little too long, in our survey, we have seen that they have kind of run into problems time and again. So these are some of the challenges that we see and the results of the survey that came out. Obviously, I mean, I alluded to a couple of ERP providers. Just one thing that comes to my mind is on Oracle as well. Oracle has got, customers of Oracle really like the breadth of solutions that Oracle offers. But what the complaint is? I mean, their complaint is, Oracle has insufficient focus on procurement, focus on supply chain. Okay, the focus of such products is on enforcement, which is good. I'm not saying it's bad, but we are not seeing the next step of that, which is enablement. Talking of self-service, and all this is not possible with products from traditional ERPs, even though they are cloud-enabled. And I think these are some of the drivers that we see, Raj.
Yeah. Okay, Jeffrey. Yeah, no, that's very good. So I'm not happy with my ERP solution. My company's already made sort of an investment, as most companies have, right? So where should I prioritize in terms of what's happening in the market today? And we talked a little bit about implementing a strategic sourcing solution, outside of ERP to sort of help in terms of these companies being able to stay ahead of the game. Can you talk a little bit, Jeffrey, to what are the 2 or 3 areas that you would prioritize in terms of being able to help with some of the bottlenecks that are happening today?
Absolutely. So let me just start by saying what are the buying patterns that we see in the market today, Raj. So when we look at the buying patterns, let's kind of put the company, the enterprises. There are centralized companies. They have homogeneous systems. On the other hand, we see a plethora of federated companies, heterogeneous systems. And then the maturity levels of these organizations, they could be either beginners or advanced. Now, when you look at, when we did the survey, which I alluded to just a minute ago, many, as a result of the survey, I said that, many want to replace their enterprise-wide solutions for their procurement and supply chain. See, when you look at federated organizations, they have many ERPs. They have several ERPs, maybe also at divisional levels within their companies. And in order to address this, you definitely need to have enterprise-wide supplier value management or procurement kind of solutions. Now, let me again elaborate a little bit. I want to just step out a bit and talk at a little bit bird's eye view level. If you want to be a future fit enterprise, if you want to be creative, agile, and resilient, you need the right practices and platforms and partners. You must just as you put your customers at the center of your strategy, operation, leadership, you should also put your suppliers at the center of your procurement and supply chain. So typically the procurement function, it just controls more than half of a company's costs. Okay, it determines the quality and the sustainability of a company's products, and it affects the speed of a company's operation. So what am I actually saying is it's fast evolving, and it's a once-in-a-generation transformation that procurement is helping the organizations with and helping the CEO of the organizations with. And that's the reason we see in leading companies, CEOs are putting suppliers at the heart of their organizations and inviting CPOs into the boardroom. Now, the job of the CPO has kind of changed from cost savings to more talking of value, talking of sustainability, business performances, and adding to the company's goals. So a short-term fix for a CPO is not an answer. It will neither be satisfactory to the CEO, nor is it sufficient. And that's unfortunately the story with the ERPs. You will need to have a best-in-class procurement tool. Now, if I come back to your question, what are the options you have? Okay, your organization has already made an investment. Okay, now what options do you have? I would suggest you need to look for and implement a best-in-class e-procurement supplier value management tool based on the needs of your organization. We will talk about this later. I think my colleague Kelly will be alluding to this in more detail. We have the source to contract and the procure to pay suite, and which covers the entire spend analytics. It covers the sourcing of goods and services, the contract lifecycle management, the supplier risk and performance management, the goods and services procurement, and the invoice automation, the 6 components of what we call as supplier value management. What is important is you need to have cohesion across your functions, and that is key. You need to break down silos. You should not build them. Procurement and supply chain software specializes actually with this kind of, helping you for greater visibility, control, and centralization. So in terms of, key takeaways, I would say that, apart from real-time visibility, tracking, and collaboration, maybe cohesion across your functions, I would say as is key, be it P2P or be it source to contract. Maybe my colleague Kelly has got her ideas here based on her experience. I would also perhaps like to take her views on that very quickly.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, we're seeing the exact same thing with our customers. Visibility over spend, collaboration, actually all of the key points that you just mentioned, we're seeing coming up as really critical features that our customers, they're the must-haves that they need.
Great.
Yes. So Kelly,
Raj, back to you.
Yep. So Kelly, in your view, then, how would you sort of define a modern platform and what companies can look to choose, and exactly how will that help them now and also in the future?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I think, I'll go ahead and speak to that. So, many of the words that you see on the screen right now really represent new, modern, innovative technology to support transformation. And that's really what customers expect out of a modern platform. And that's because many of these themes that you see here really stem from our customers' pain points too. Modern platforms are needed in order to solve these challenges. So modern platforms need to provide key capabilities to enable visibility. And as Jeffrey was talking about silos and reducing silos, modern platforms help to do that. They're flexible and easy to configure to meet specific business requirements, and all of these things help lead to faster time to value. One of the things that we're really seeing also in the market is there's this huge explosion of the creation of new apps, and there's some predictions that with more than 500, that there will be more than 500 million new apps expected to be built globally over the next few years. And organizations are really going to have to strike that balance between managing technology and building new features. Modern platforms handle many of ERP's workloads, but with a very different architecture, which Jeffrey alluded to too, that helps make them more flexible, open, and easier to use. So technology leaders that are considering managing procurement outside of their ERP suites now with a modern platform are doing so because they want to improve business agility in order to meet customers' ever-changing expectations. They also want to improve application usability to enhance employee experiences. With the convergence of procurement and supply chain, collaboration is really critical. Modern platforms support collaboration across their integrated applications, and also these integrated applications, but they also support their entire business network. Operational excellence is also really important to serve customers faster and at a lower cost. And one thing we've learned for sure with the pandemic and when we have an unexpected disruption is that change cannot take years. A scalable architecture is also really important so that architecture enables you to scale to meet those increased workloads. Modern platforms that are cloud agnostic and database agnostic, and even modern platforms that support low-code capabilities are really providing tremendous opportunities in the management of applications. And, of course, with what Jeffrey mentioned too, with reducing silos and increasing the visibility of spend, it's so important that you can see all of your spend in one place in real time across suppliers, across categories, and buyers. And I want to dive into just a few of the key capabilities to look for in a modern platform and how it will help you future-proof procurement. So the first area that I want to dive into is agility. Since the beginning of the pandemic, resiliency has risen to the top of the supply chain and corporate agendas. And if organizations plan to manage procurement outside of ERP suites now, improving agility and resilience will be really, really critical. Future-proof platforms with a modern architecture are flexible and they help support innovation. And the faster that you can innovate and even engage and enable your employees to be part of that change will help enable transformation. Modern platforms with low-code capabilities help empower rapid application development. So with these types of capabilities around low-code, it helps support more modular development patterns and more agile developer processes too. And what this helps and will help enable organizations to do is to quickly adapt to and change and shift priorities or change direction when needed. And it's really important to be able to truly pivot when disruptions occur and to be agile. And either if you need to, if there's a disruption or for any reason, that you could create new apps or applications or extend your existing application stack when you need to. Many technology leaders are also modernizing their business's core systems so that they can power that next wave of process innovation. And so with a modular architecture, changes to any individual application component can be made really quickly, and it's at a lower risk because of because it's modular. It has a lot lower risk to the entire application. And where this really helps is that teams can then experiment and innovate with new ideas more often without, bringing risk to the entire product or application. When organizations can innovate at a rapid pace, it will really help speed up your time to market and increase your return on investment. It enables quicker feedback and faster decision making. And all that extra time that you save then can go towards working on more critical tasks or more complex projects to also support your business. And I know, Jeffrey, I know you've had many inquiries and have done a lot of studies with regard to ROI. Is there anything more that you want to share here just with regard to ROI?
Yeah, Kelly, sorry, I was just getting off mute there. ROI is, a very key driver today when you talk of the chief procurement officers and the CEO's priorities. So, you talked about low code, you talked about agility. All these are perfect examples. So I can just give an anecdotal evidences. So we were talking to this global bank, again from the banking sector. They prior to the pandemic, they were using their ERP for their invoices, and they had a service provider in a low-cost location to kind of scan all these invoices through an OCR network and put it in their ERP and then send it for the approval processes and so on. So what happened come March 2020, shut down across the world, and people were not able to go into their offices. They had absolutely no access to invoices. And suppliers, suppliers are sometimes very dependent on their cash flows. They need to be paid. And companies as well, CFOs are very mindful of their cash flows as well, that what needs to be paid has to be paid within the time, otherwise there could be penalties coming. So all these were, came to a standstill, and that's when companies realized that had we had a touchless invoice automation, whether we work from home or we work in the office, all this would have been would have happened in a matter of seconds. The invoice gets raised at the supplier's system, and as soon as it's raised through modern software, it's immediately reflected. It doesn't even have to be sent over email, but it's reflected into the buyer's system, and then the software is so intelligent that it's able to pick up if it's a repeat invoice, or if there has been a purchase order to these invoices, if have the goods or services been delivered. and who is the approver in this process. So all this is done by modern software automatically, and it's in fact, if there are no approvers required because everything seems to fall in place and it's kind of a repetitive invoice that comes in at a certain frequency, it actually sends a message to the payment engine to saying it's ready for payment. So what happens, we're talking about turnaround times that typically took 2 to 3 days, 72 hours in most cases, to about 6 minutes. So in 6 minutes, everything is done, and in fact, the invoices get paid. I was talking the other day to the same bank's AP head who said that, we don't take 6 minutes. I think it's done in 6 seconds. I do not know if he was joking,
Wow.
but that's about the ROI. So you talked about containerization, low code. You talked about integration. You talked about dynamic applications, and all these are done through modern procurement software, and that brings in the flexibility, that brings in the rapid ROI that is very much required now in these days, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's an incredible example, and it just it's amazing to think what took 2 to 3 days or even sometimes longer down to 6 minutes or even down to 6 seconds. That's amazing. So one of the other areas that technology leaders also should look for modern platforms, we alluded to it a little bit earlier today, is that they expect a modern user experience. Users want to use products that are intuitive and are easy to use and just work. Procurement and supply chain, like most industries, our customers rely heavily on technology, and creating a system that allows users to perform their job with the least resistance and frustration is really critical. And this should be the goal of every company. Successful products are built with the end user in mind and enable personalization at every corner, because most employees are actually doing their work and juggling multiple apps every single day. And modern platforms have apps that are tightly integrated with a consistent user experience throughout. And our customers require different products and processes to work together seamlessly and with also a seamless user experience. One of the other things, of course, with supply chain is that's required is supply chains must have strong flexibility, visibility, and collaboration. And a modern user experience provides the real-time collaboration and visibility that users expect. And it's really important to not separate sourcing, procurement, and supply chain, because sourcing really anchors procurement and supply chain and brings it all together. And modern platforms have products that bridge these gaps between data silos by displaying information from multiple sources, from a variety of different sources in a single beautiful user experience. And one of the things too that we also see is that modern platforms can drive convergence and help close the supply chain gaps and allow organizations to operationalize resiliency across their supply chain and also across their entire ecosystem. The best-in-class enable collaboration not only across multiple tiers, but multiple enterprises as well. Collaboration is really, really critical, and personalization, and of course that intuitive design to a modern user experience. The next area that I want to dive into a little bit more is around operational excellence. Because if you're considering managing procurement outside of your ERP suites, you look to modern platforms to help improve operational excellence and really serve your customers faster and at a lower cost. And modern platforms with low-code capabilities help supplement procure-to-pay and supply chain capabilities by helping to eliminate manual processes and rapidly digitize your unique processes, just as we're talking about. And that's where we really see a tremendous amount of return on investment. But they also help reduce silos by centralizing data and connecting data from all these different sources where data resides. They also are smart with AI at the core. And having AI at the core helps to drive quicker, better decisions and helps to also help you gain real-time actionable insight. And one key element here is just to consider when you're looking at a modern platform is that you want to see AI at the core versus an afterthought. And one thing that we've certainly learned, as I mentioned before, is when there is a disruption, we know that the change cannot take years, but also in order to weather any future disruptions and stay ahead, our customers need their supply chain operations to be extremely flexible. These platforms also must protect against technology churn, where organizations must replace outdated products and methods to vitalize their growth. And technology churn is really closely related to legacy debt. Overcoming legacy debt is really one of the biggest issues that that happens with IT, and it occurs when technology can no longer support the business requirements. And that's where Deborah was even alluding to, a lot of customizations that happened in the past, and then you get to the point where you have all of these customizations and you're kind of stuck. So modern platforms enable, kind of help protect against that. And one area we see for sure with low-code platforms is that it can take on both of these challenges with ease because flexibility is built in at the core with more, modular and agile development practices. One other area. Oh yeah, please, Jeffrey.
Kelly, I think you just brought in some a brilliant point on AI, and I thought I should just mention this. So, what Forrester has been talking to the enterprises is when we talk to CPOs, we have been advising them to implement modern SCM software, supplier value management software, that includes AI-powered use cases. You know why? You talked about freeing the procurement professionals, and this is so valuable to them. They are no longer caught up doing their cost cutting or into their mundane operational tasks. But when you talk about freeing them up, their eyes open. And then you say that the software is not only able to free up your time, it will alert you to issues. It will, to issues that merit their attention, and all the rest of the operational stuff that doesn't even have to go through them, doesn't come to them. So when we talk to these CPOs, say, tell us more. So I just wanted to kind of quickly summarize and say, this AI-driven modern software, I did mention this a few minutes ago. It helps you to automate tasks. Brings in a lot of automation. How? It mimics what skilled professionals do, the high volume tasks are done. It kind of, for example, it redlines suppliers' standard contracts. The second is it prioritizes actions. It can flag issues or exceptions, as I mentioned, and only those exceptions need to be investigated by a human. It could be a business user, it could be the CPO, it could be anyone, a buyer. And then it also helps you to optimize decisions, where it helps you, the decisions that a normal human would have made, the software is able to make. And there are a lot of examples that we can talk about, which, frees up the time that Kelly alluded to of the procurement and the business users.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So let's just go to one kind of last key area where technology leaders should consider how a modern platform can really help is by delivering faster time to value. Of course, with all of the, with the automation and the AI that we've already discussed, One other area where low-code platforms can really help lower costs and speed up development time is to provide quicker return on your investment. And it's not just, and we've already kind of talked about some real examples with return on investment, but technology leaders can measure their ROI through a few other key metrics. And one of the most direct financial metrics that you can use to calculate ROI of a modern platform is IT expenditure. And so there's two major areas where modern platforms with low-code capabilities specifically can really help reduce IT spend significantly. The first is the cost of hiring new developers. So if you want your existing developers to be twice as productive on low-code, it would obviously directly result in fewer developers that you would need to hire. And so knowing that most developers come at a very significant cost, which is oftentimes even more than the cost of the platform, that alone is reason enough to try out low-code and some of those key capabilities with low-code. The second way that low-code reduces IT spending is by reducing the number of single-point solutions that a company uses. So most organizations have licenses to dozens of software tools, many of which might only help one single department. So by leveraging the low-code tools, customers can not only extend their applications in their existing product lines, but they can also create new applications to help automate processes and reduce dependency on multiple third-party vendors for those single-point solutions that they have in individual departments. You could also measure developer productivity. Low-code will help, of course, increase the productivity for IT developers. And so for most IT leaders, digital transformation is a major focus and priority, and modern low-code platforms really just help you get there faster. So whether it means that your IT developers are building more homegrown solutions for specific departments one at a time, or that you're maybe unleashing and kind of that power of digital process management onto your entire organization, leveraging low-code tools and modular development practices, that can also give a huge boost into reaching the goals from an IT perspective. The third measure to consider is to reduce the IT backlog. So a lot of times what we hear from customers is that, and when we're speaking to CIOs and IT departments, is that there's this huge long list of priorities that they need to tackle. It's overwhelming, actually, and every day that list continues to grow. And so when individual departments need to, have a new project, or they want to solve some of their business challenges, it's kind of like get on the list and it'll be a 3-year wait. And so with a modern low-code platform, the IT backlog can really be tremendously reduced. With the right tools and that programmers can have, they can knock out the biggest projects in a fraction of the time that it usually takes them with the low-code technology. And then the last point here is just really around increasing IT output. So IT output is always high on the minds of IT leaders. So with low-code technology and a modern platform and modern tools, development can be progressed at the department or at the business level. And the nice thing about that is it can, work can happen and whether it be changes in an application or new applications can be built by those who are experts in the business. And this actually frees up IT developers to do more complex projects or more mission critical projects. And so it's essentially kind of widening the those that can develop with the low-code technology, so that it frees up and increases IT output in exchange. Those are just a few of the areas that I wanted to dive into a little bit more with regard to, what to consider when thinking about a modern platform and some of the key elements, of course, that Jeffrey has been talking about, and also that we're seeing with our customers.
Wow, thanks, Kelly and Jeffrey as well. Very good insight, and really taking the time to explain to us why the modern platform is the right solution to implement for procurement and supply chain in order to help organizations and future-proof them. This was a lot of insight, a lot to take in, so really do appreciate that. Now, in terms of timing, I just wanted to sort of recap, and these are some of the key points that you see here on the screen. But for me, the most important takeaway is sort of that, you know, time is of the essence, right? You can't wait for an ERP to catch up in the future. You need to start tackling the needs of today. So if you want to stay afloat in this ever-changing market, you need to implement a modern platform that can provide the agility and the flexibility. User experience, visibility, and collaboration are really the keys to success here. And of course, providers like GEP are here to help with sort of just that. So what I'd like to do now is maybe take a few questions from the audience. I know we have one from Andy that's come in, and Andy is asking about SAP and SAP Ariba, and how would we classify that as a modern platform? Jeffrey, I'm going to turn this question to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the question, Andy. So SAP Ariba. So we talked about ERPs in depth today. Now, SAP Ariba is actually one of the top 10 SVM software that we did a wave analysis on. Now, in terms of the SAP Ariba itself, it does offer a comprehensive S2P suite. It does have both the sourcing to source to contract as well as the procure to pay suite. But what we have seen that in terms of the flexibility of the system and the architecture, we see that there are shortfalls. However, when we look at the entire gamut in terms of self-services, contracts, smart forms, and so on, there are options to do this through your SAP Ariba system. So we count that as part of our SVM tools that enables self-service.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey. So another question we've got coming in from Mike. Everyone is talking about ESG and sustainability, but we're struggling on where to begin. How can this new modern platform help to sort of accelerate and support ESG and sustainability initiatives? So Jeffrey, maybe I'll start with you.
Absolutely. So modern software, it kind of helps you, manage your supplier-related risks. Now, when you talk of ESG, environment, social, and governance, the SVM solutions include vital tools to help CPOs address their priorities, much beyond cost reduction. So improving the supplier resilience and also addressing the ESG imperatives. Now, what they do is, in terms of, to just give you an anecdotal evidences, now in terms of, we talked about empowering and guiding users, buyers to make sound buying decisions. So what happens is, the self-service option that I talked about, it reduces delay, it reduces cost and frustration, but it also kind of, modern software guides shoppers to make cheaper options for, not just the users to take greener items, not just the buyers to take suppliers who have ESG certifications. I just want to kind of take a short minute. I'm just conscious of the time. Everyone knows of this confectionery manufacturer, Mars. they use palm oil for their manufacturing of their confectionery, and they found that this palm oil actually comes from rainforests, and they have to clear a lot of rainforests in Asia and other countries to get this palm oil. So that was itself a clear ESG red alert. The second thing is also the use of labor. Now, what Mars did was they kind of said, okay, we need an alternative source. We need to move away from this palm oil, and they looked for alternative sources so that they could manufacture the confectionery. And then they worked with specialist parties. So it's a big case study in itself and cannot be alluded to in about a minute. But important to know is they knocked off a few suppliers who were instrumental in bringing this palm oil by removing rainforests and other, not good labor practices, and instead choose different suppliers. And this is exactly what modern software will nudge you to make better decisions in terms of ESG.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I know that's a great story there. Now, in terms of, we have another question from Sanjana. So, Kelly, I'm going to turn to you. The question is, if migrating to this new modern platform, how much or what percent of reinventing the whole setup will be required? So I guess when you're going through the implementation, what are some of the key areas maybe that would require setup?
So, one of the things that Jeffrey definitely mentioned was the ease of setup and administration. And so one thing with a modern platform, and I know, as a senior director of product management, I always, and I think most modern platforms, you have to be thinking about and building products with that are configurable and not, kind of focusing on configuration and not customization, so that we kind of get into this problem that we've had in the past where we were kind of talking about the legacy debt. So configuration is the key, and that there's definitely an impact with setup and administration. So being able to configure, and I'll just give a few examples, workflow or processes. So having that to be easy configuration so that you're not extending and making customizations to the product itself, which means if it's configurable, it can easily be changed and it can adapt when you need it to adapt. Another example might be approval processes. If you think about your approval workflows, they change, and they're not, not kind of a once and done, thought. You might change the approval flow, make it more efficient. And so having a modern platform that supports, whether it be configuration of processes, approval flows, and there's a whole host of many other areas like around business logic that you can have configurability. But I know that that's really the key. And so from a transition perspective, I think maybe it's more too of a transition of mindset. So for modern software to deliver, think of it like, custom, but not the custom price tag or all of the legacy debt that goes along with custom, because now, we want to make things more configurable and easy to change when you need it to. And that's where that, key flexibility and agility comes into play.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, no, that's very, very important and key to set up and how you would move to this modern platform. So thank you for that. So I know we have a ton of questions and we could continue all day, but we are at time. So what we will do is reach out to any of you that have questions and make sure we get those answered. That's all we have time for today. So thank you, everyone, for attending, and to our presenters, Jeffrey and Kelly, for a very insightful session.
Thank you so much, Raj. Thanks, everyone, for attending.
Thank you. Bye-bye.